When God whispers to a person to focus on themselves, it is not an invitation to selfishness, but a divine summons to awakening, a sacred call to look inward and understand the greatness planted within them waiting to be unlocked. When you shift your attention from what others are doing to what God is doing inside you, something powerful begins to happen, a realignment that sharpens your vision and strengthens your purpose. Many people remain stuck because their eyes are fixed outward, comparing, competing, and constantly measuring themselves against the noise around them, losing the quiet voice that speaks from within. God never told you to chase the world. He told you to steward your own soul, to examine the habits, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that shape your spiritual authority. Focusing on yourself means tuning your heart to heaven's frequency, listening long enough to hear instructions meant only for you. You cannot rise if your mind is divided, for a scattered soul cannot receive concentrated blessings. Every destiny requires internal alignment, and every transformation begins with a decision to look inward instead of outward. When you prioritize inner growth, you give God permission to pour wisdom, clarity, and strength into the areas that have been ignored for too long. The potential inside you becomes activated when you stop chasing distractions and start nurturing the divine spark placed within you before you were even born. There is a supernatural shift that occurs when you stop wasting energy on people who are not assigned to your destiny, because misplaced attention is one of the greatest thieves of spiritual power. Focusing on yourself means reclaiming your energy from things that drain you, environments that weaken you, and relationships that distort your purpose. It is choosing to strengthen your inner world so your outer world can finally align with God's plan for your life. Heaven responds to a focused heart, because focus is faith in motion, showing God that you are ready for the next level. When your eyes are fixed on others, jealousy grows, comparison deepens, and insecurity multiplies. But when your eyes return to your own path, confidence rises and clarity returns. A person who focuses inward becomes unshakable, because they no longer depend on external validation to feel valuable or guided. God created each person with a unique pattern, a specific assignment, and a personal development journey that cannot be copied or compared. When you focus on yourself, you begin to see the areas that need healing, the gifts that need sharpening, and the disciplines that must be restored. You stop running from your weaknesses and start transforming them into strengths. You rise from confusion into direction, from stagnation into movement, from fear into divine confidence. Many people pray for elevation while ignoring the inner work required to receive the very thing they are asking for, hoping for external change without internal transformation. But God's instruction to focus on yourself is His invitation to prepare, to strengthen your character, to discipline your emotions, and to renew the habits that shape your daily life. Self-focus means slowing down enough to ask yourself the real questions. What habits are robbing me of my potential? What thoughts are repeating in my mind that do not align with God's truth? What cycles am I feeding that must be broken before I can step into my next chapter? This kind of honesty creates spiritual momentum, opening doors that were once locked because the heart was unprepared to walk through them. As you focus on your inner world, you discover that you are responsible for the environment within you, the atmosphere of your mind, and the direction of your emotions. You cannot control what others do, but you can control how you think, respond, grow, and rise. The moment you accept this truth, You shift from being a reactor to a creator, shaping your life from a place of intentionality and spiritual authority. When God says to focus on yourself, He is inviting you to restore the value of your own life, to treat your time, energy, and destiny as sacred investments instead of wasted opportunities. Growth requires attention, and whatever you water will flourish, whether that is fear or faith, distraction or discipline, stagnation or development. The more you focus on your inner world, the more your external life begins to change, because your results always mirror your internal condition. A disciplined spirit produces a powerful life, and a focused mind produces supernatural clarity. When you stop scattering your energy on people who do not understand your calling, you reclaim your strength and redirect it toward the purpose God assigned you. You become aware of the patterns that have controlled you, the lies you have believed, and the cycles that kept you small. You begin to see that your life is not waiting for someone else to change, but waiting for you to awaken. And as you focus on yourself, you discover that God has been waiting for this moment, waiting for you to look inward so He could begin to elevate you outward. Every habit you practice carries a vibration, a consequence, and a direction, guiding your life toward growth or decline, strength or weakness, clarity or confusion. People do not become powerful by accident. They become powerful through repeated actions that align them with their highest identity. The spiritual world and the physical world both respond to consistency, and whatever you do daily becomes a silent architect shaping your future. Most people underestimate the influence of their routine behaviors, not realizing that small choices repeated over time create lifelong outcomes. You cannot pray for transformation while feeding habits that contradict the very change you desire, for the body and spirit cannot move in opposite directions. Every repeated action, and even every repeated indulgence, programs the mind, conditions the body, and affects your spiritual focus. There are habits that elevate you and habits that drain you, habits that feed your strength and habits that weaken your inner power. When your habits work against your destiny, you begin to feel spiritually dry, emotionally unbalanced, and physically depleted. But when your habits align with discipline, purity, clarity, and purpose, your entire life begins to rise. Your daily routine is a reflection of your inner priorities, revealing what you value, what you fear, and what you are avoiding. Many people wish for greatness, but live in patterns that shrink their potential, staying stuck in cycles that rob them of energy, creativity, and purpose. The body is not a machine without consequence. It responds to everything you repeatedly expose it to, whether nourishing discipline or destructive impulse. What seems small today becomes significant over time, and what seems harmless in the moment can become harmful when it becomes a pattern. Your spiritual sensitivity is deeply connected to how you treat your mind and body, for a scattered life cannot produce focused revelation. When you engage in habits that overstimulate, drain, or confuse your system, your clarity becomes foggy and your motivation becomes weak. The decisions you make in private shape the battles you face in public, influencing your confidence, your energy, and your emotional stability. You cannot unlock the future God designed for you while maintaining habits that keep you bound to the past. Transformation requires honesty, and honesty requires confronting patterns that feel comfortable but are destroying long-term purpose. There is a deep truth that few understand. Discipline is not about denying yourself pleasure, it is about protecting your power. The habits you feed are the habits that shape you, and the habits that shape you determine the life you live. If you repeatedly give in to impulses, those impulses begin to govern your energy, weakening your ability to focus, create, or pursue higher calling. Emotional strength comes from resisting the easy path and choosing the path of mastery, the path that aligns you with your spiritual identity rather than your temporary desires. Repeated indulgence, especially when tied to physical release, can drain your drive, scatter your focus, and weaken your sense of purpose, creating cycles of guilt, fatigue, and emotional heaviness. Your body is sacred, and anything you repeatedly do with it produces physical and spiritual consequences, affecting hormones, motivation, and mental clarity. When your habits weaken your body, they also weaken your spirit, because exhaustion makes it difficult to hear God, difficult to discipline yourself, and difficult to rise. Your habits must become your allies, not your enemies, and you must choose routines that build you instead of break you. Through consistent discipline, you regain control of your energy, your identity, and your direction, and the life you once struggled to manage begins to come into order. Every habit either strengthens your future or sabotages it, and understanding this truth gives you authority over the direction of your life. People do not fall because of one mistake. They fall because of repeated decisions that slowly erode their strength and clarity. The body remembers patterns even when the mind tries to ignore them, and the emotions respond to repetition more strongly than intention. When you indulge in habits that drain your life force, especially ones tied to physical overstimulation, your body begins to pay a price through fatigue, inflammation, reduced motivation, and weakened internal systems. The prostate in particular is an organ sensitive to patterns, and repeated daily strain can create stress that the body quietly absorbs. While your mind may tell you the habit is harmless, your body reveals the truth through discomfort, heaviness, lack of drive, and emotional imbalance. You cannot ignore the connection between physical habits and spiritual clarity, because the same energy that fuels the body fuels focus, creativity, and direction. When your habits weaken your physical foundation, your purpose becomes harder to pursue, and your calling becomes harder to hear. But when you restore discipline, your energy returns, your clarity sharpens, and your spirit rises to a higher frequency. The life you desire cannot be built with the habits that are destroying you, and the destiny you dream about requires a stronger version of you. Habits are seeds, and every seed produces a harvest, whether of strength or weakness, purity or distraction, purpose or regret. When you choose habits that strengthen your mind and body, you step into alignment with God's design for your life, unlocking confidence, clarity, and inner stability. But when you choose habits that numb, drain, or damage your body, you slowly disconnect from the spiritual authority that you were meant to walk in. Your future is shaped by what you practice consistently, not what you wish occasionally, and your destiny is influenced by the hidden choices no one sees. If you desire elevation, you must elevate your habits. If you desire transformation, you must transform your routine. If you desire breakthrough, you must break the patterns that hold you back. Your body, your mind, and your spirit will always respond to discipline, because discipline brings order, and order creates space for divine increase. When your daily habits strengthen your foundation, your entire life begins to shift upward, revealing the person you were always meant to become. What you do when no one is watching becomes the truest reflection of who you are, because hidden actions shape internal character long before they ever manifest outwardly. People often underestimate the power of private behavior, believing that secrecy protects them from consequences, not realizing that the body and soul keep records the mind tries to ignore. Every repeated action, especially the ones done in silence, builds invisible patterns that later become visible outcomes, affecting confidence, clarity, energy, and emotional strength. Daily masturbation may seem like a temporary escape, a moment of release, or even a harmless ritual, but anything done repeatedly begins to influence the body's systems and the mind's direction. The heart grows tired, the mind grows foggy, and the spirit grows restless when the body is overstimulated beyond what it was designed to handle. Quiet habits create loud results, and the consequences of private indulgence often appear in physical tension, emotional imbalance, and weakened motivation. The body responds to overstimulation by creating dependency, making you believe you need what is actually draining you. And when your inner strength is weakened, your outer life begins to show signs of imbalance, confusion, and fatigue. Private choices determine public outcomes, and this truth emerges gradually but undeniably. Every cycle you repeat sends a message to your mind about what is normal, what is allowed, and what is expected, shaping your identity one decision at a time. When a person engages daily in acts that drain their energy, the mind adapts by lowering its standards and weakening its discipline, making it harder to resist the same behavior in the future. What begins as a choice can slowly become a habit, and what becomes a habit can eventually feel like part of your identity, even when it contradicts who you truly are. Daily masturbation trains the brain to seek quick pleasure, instant gratification, and emotional escape rather than discipline, clarity, and purpose. The repetition alters emotional patterns, creating cravings for relief instead of a desire for growth, leaving the soul tired even when the body feels momentarily satisfied. The physical overstimulation also affects the hormonal balance that governs motivation, drive, and mental sharpness, making you feel sluggish, unfocused, and emotionally weaker over time. The mind becomes dependent on the cycle, and the body begins to expect a release it was never designed to experience so frequently. A person may feel temporary comfort, but internally they are becoming more disconnected from their power, their confidence, and their ability to rise above impulses. And when inner strength declines, outer strength follows, creating struggles in focus, ambition, and emotional stability. The prostate itself is an organ highly sensitive to overstimulation, and daily strain can cause inflammation, discomfort, and heightened internal pressure that the body quietly absorbs until it becomes noticeable. Though the mind may try to justify the habit, the physical body responds with signs that something is out of balance, sending subtle warnings that are often ignored until they become louder. Repeated daily release can create fatigue because the body must constantly replenish what is being drained, weakening energy reserves needed for creativity, clarity, and strength. Hormonal shifts caused by frequent overstimulation can reduce drive, lower confidence, and create emotional dullness, disconnecting a person from their natural vitality and sense of purpose. The nervous system becomes overstimulated, making it harder to feel satisfied, harder to focus, and harder to find meaning outside of short-term impulses. Over time, daily masturbation can also weaken pelvic muscles and disrupt normal functioning, creating tension, tightness, or discomfort that reveals itself long after the moment of indulgence. The spirit feels the impact too, because a tired body produces a tired mind, and a tired mind produces a tired soul. When your physical foundation is drained, your spiritual connection becomes dull, making prayer harder, focus weaker, and discipline almost impossible. Hidden habits grow roots deep inside the soul, shaping confidence, shaping identity, and shaping the level of spiritual clarity you carry. When you repeatedly engage in something that brings momentary pleasure but long-term fatigue, you begin to lose trust in yourself, doubting your strength and questioning your ability to overcome temptation. This self-doubt bleeds into other areas of life, relationships, career, spiritual practices, personal goals, because the mind believes you cannot control the simplest impulses. What you do daily becomes who you believe you are, and who you believe you are determines how you show up in the world. A person who feels drained secretly will also feel small publicly, because inner weakness eventually shows in posture, energy, voice, and decisions. Emotional heaviness begins to grow, not because the world is against you, but because the inner world is out of order. You begin to avoid responsibilities, procrastinate goals, and lose enthusiasm because the cycle has consumed the energy your purpose requires. And slowly, without realizing it, your private actions rewrite your public identity, shaping a life that reflects exhaustion more than vision, habit more than intention, and escape more than purpose. But the most profound effect of hidden actions lies in how they shape your spiritual awareness, because overstimulation creates noise in the soul, making it difficult to hear divine direction or feel inner conviction. When the mind becomes addicted to pleasure, it loses sensitivity to purpose, drifting toward comfort instead of calling, toward escape instead of growth. Daily indulgence numbs spiritual hunger, weakening the desire to pray, to reflect, to grow, or to listen to the voice that calls you higher. A person cannot walk in power while living in cycles that drain their authority, because spiritual strength requires clarity, focus, purity, and discipline. The more a person feeds the impulse, the louder the impulse becomes, drowning out the subtle guidance meant to lead them into their destiny. The future becomes harder to see, not because it isn't there, but because the inner world is clouded by patterns that distort vision. And over time, the consequences of hidden actions become visible in the form of foggy thinking, weakened confidence, emotional instability, and spiritual dryness, proving that nothing done in secret stays hidden from the soul. There comes a moment in every life where a person must confront the truth that no one is coming to rescue them, because the power to change is already inside them, waiting to be awakened. Transformation does not happen by accident. It happens when you make a conscious decision to take back control of your mind, your habits, and the direction of your life. You cannot rise while surrendering to impulses that weaken you, nor can you step into greatness while clinging to patterns that keep you small. Your destiny begins the moment you decide you will no longer be governed by your weaknesses, but by your purpose, your vision, and your spiritual identity. Every great change begins with a personal choice, a shift in focus, a moment where you refuse to stay the same. God created you with the capacity to master your thoughts, discipline your body, and strengthen your spirit, because He placed power within you, not around you. When you declare that you will take responsibility for your life, heaven responds by strengthening your steps and guiding your path. You are not trapped by your past unless you choose to stay there, and you are not defined by your impulses unless you allow them to rule you. The freedom you seek begins with a single decision: to rise above the cycles that have controlled you for too long. Taking back control means recognizing that your mind is the headquarters of your destiny, and whatever governs your thoughts eventually governs your life. If your thoughts are filled with defeat, your actions will reflect defeat. But if your thoughts are filled with possibility, your actions will reflect power. You cannot overcome destructive patterns with a weak mindset, because the mind must rise before the life can rise. This requires renewing your thoughts daily, speaking life over yourself, and refusing to entertain the lies that tell you you're not strong enough to change. When you take control of your mind, temptation loses its power, because clarity replaces confusion and purpose replaces impulse. A focused mind creates a focused life, sharpening your decisions, strengthening your discipline, and empowering you to break cycles that once felt unbreakable. Every day you choose strength over weakness, you reshape your identity and transform your future. You begin to realize that your actions are not random but intentional, guided by a higher purpose that calls you into mastery. As your mind becomes stronger, your habits become aligned, and your life begins to reflect the strength you've built internally. Transforming your life also requires taking back control of your habits, because habits are the engines that drive your future, whether upward or downward. When you allow impulses to dictate your behavior, you surrender your power and weaken your identity, making purpose harder to access. But when you take control of your habits, you take control of your destiny, because consistency shapes character and character shapes outcomes. Breaking destructive habits demands honesty, courage, and a willingness to face the truth about what you've allowed yourself to accept. It means acknowledging that daily indulgence, especially in areas tied to physical release, has drained your confidence, weakened your discipline, and reduced your spiritual sensitivity. Taking back control means deciding that your body will no longer be a slave to momentary desire, but a vessel of strength, clarity, and purpose. Each day you resist the old cycle, you build new strength, because discipline accumulates just like indulgence accumulates. And as your habits change, your energy rises, your vision sharpens, and your spirit awakens to new levels of direction and authority. Reclaiming your life also requires you to take back control of your emotional world, because emotions are powerful forces that can either propel you forward or pull you backward. When your emotions are unstable, you react instead of lead, escape instead of confront, and drift instead of rise. But when you take responsibility for your emotional state, you begin to understand the triggers, cycles, and feelings that once pushed you toward damaging habits. You learn to pause before reacting, breathe before breaking, and reflect before repeating patterns that hurt you. Taking back emotional control empowers you to face discomfort with maturity instead of running to old escapes. You begin to heal the wounds that made you seek relief instead of restoration, and your inner world becomes stronger, calmer, and more stable. Emotional discipline gives you strength to endure challenges without collapsing back into old habits. And as your emotions come under control, your decisions improve, your habits strengthen, and your life begins to reflect stability and purpose. Taking back control means rising in spiritual strength, because true transformation is impossible without reconnecting to the power that created you. When your spirit is weak, your mind becomes scattered and your body becomes vulnerable to cycles that drain you. But when your spirit is awakened, your clarity increases, your resistance grows, and your desire for purity becomes stronger than your desire for momentary comfort. Spiritual focus sharpens your awareness, making it easier to recognize the patterns that once controlled you and the impulses that once dictated your actions. You begin to hear the inner voice that calls you higher, reminding you that you were created for purpose, not addiction, for greatness, not weakness, for freedom, not bondage. Taking back spiritual control means choosing prayer over impulse, reflection over escape, discipline over distraction, and purpose over pleasure. As your spiritual strength increases, your body responds with renewed energy, your mind responds with renewed clarity, and your future responds with renewed possibility. You discover that the power to transform your life was never outside you. It was inside you all along, waiting for you to claim it.